Hello everyone and welcome to Werven's World and welcome to my politics guide of Endless Space 2. So politics are a really nice addition to the game. The cool thing about it is that you can completely ignore them if you would like to play the game without having all this additional complexity. However, if you do decide to dig into them, they do offer a lot of cool intricacies to play around with. So let's get started. So a very important thing to know about politics in this game is that each population I have has a certain output, a political output. So here we can see these graphs. Let's say that these are all buckets that can hold a certain amount of political output. So let's say I do something militarist, then all these people here will put a little bit, a couple of drops into the militarist bucket. If I do some pacifism stuff, then they will put some drops into the pacifism bucket, and so on. However, that's a little bit too simplistic. Because, for example, if we go to our population details, we can see that Gnashast are anti-pacifist. So whenever I do something pacifistic, they will only put a small drop in the pacifism bucket and they'll actually put a big drop in the militarist bucket. Also, if I do something military, they will put a really big drop in the militarist bucket. While with the Lumeris, they're anti-militarist, so whenever I do something military, they don't put a very big drop in that bucket. So these buckets will basically fill up, or well, it's kind of like ratio, so they cannot all be full. But yeah, so each population has a certain effect on this, and each population also has an inherent leaning. So if we hover over this one here, the Lumeris, they have political opinion pacifist. This Gnashast here has political opinion militarist, and these Kalgoros have religious. So over time, if I don't do anything else, these will kind of fill up the buckets on their own a little bit because they like to be pacifist, basically. It doesn't necessarily mean that they will be pacifist in the end, but they lean towards this. So we can actually see what has been affecting all these people's minds by clicking on this button here. And so we can see that for the militarist opinions, we can see, well, we've won a battle, we lost a planet, we lost a hero, we've been at war, we've been attacked, we've actually constructed some military ships, and all of that has been increasing the military bucket. However, also the pacifist stuff that I've been doing has been increasing the military bucket because of these Gnashas that had that anti-pacifist opinion. So they are actually filling up the military bucket even though I am doing pacifist stuff. Now if I go to pacifist stuff, then I can see that, well, I've done a lot of pacifist stuff, and that has increased the bucket because of the Lumeris mostly, because the Gnashas didn't really care so much. However, the Lumeris also fill up the bucket if I do some ecological stuff, which we can see here. Lumeris, they are hedonistic, so every ecological event also supports pacifism. So basically this goes throughout the entire game. So everything you do basically has an effect. Let's say I built this thing, then the industrialist opinion will go up. Let's say I built this militarist ship, then the militarist opinion will go up. Let's say I built this solar sector, solar security operations base, then my pacifist opinion will go up, which will then also increase the militarist opinion because I have Gnashast in this system. And this actually also extends to research. So if we click on research, we can hover over things and we can see that if I would research this, I would get more religious political impact. With this one, I would also have more religious. With this one, I would have more ecologist. With this one, more scientific, and so on. So researching certain technologies will also push your population into certain directions. So basically everything can have an effect on everything, and it can be quite a lot to think about. For example, here we have our hero, our governor, who is a pacifist, and if we go here, we can see that having a pacifist governor actually increases pacifism as well. But because we also have the Gnashast, because we have this governor, they go up in military leaning as well. Then we also, just by having Lumeris population, which are pacifists, they, I guess, talk to the Gnashast, and the Gnashast are just misinterpreting it or something like that, and then they also increase the military leaning by quite a bit. They also increase the pacifist leaning by a bit, but not as much as the military leaning. Now I thought I would illustrate all this bucket stuff a little bit more. So let's say I want to increase my military support so that next elections I will have mostly military representatives so that everyone will be happy. Well, in order to do that, I can, for example, here you can see this Corvette, which will increase militarist opinion. So if I just build a lot of those, and we can even build out, we can just buy out all of these. See how many we can get in one turn. Here we go. So at the moment, this is about half. No, not even, maybe 1/3. And then Industrialists, and so on. So if we now press and turn, then you can see that it had quite a big effect. So this is all ratiometric. So basically, if something increases, something else has to decrease. And you saw that the military now increased and especially the industrialists decreased. So that shows that just building stuff like this will have an effect on the opinion. Of course, it doesn't have a huge effect on it. I really needed to buy a lot of these ships, but that's basically because you have 20 turns in order to, well, do a lot of stuff that will decrease or increase certain opinions. So I guess it's safe to say that everything or almost everything affects political opinion in one way or another in this game. However, you have to distinguish between global and system-wide things. For example, if I research something, then everyone in my empire will be affected by that a little bit because the political impact will be a little bit ecologist. However, if I build a lot of military stuff in this system, then my militarism will go up here, but not in this system, because this system doesn't care at all what I'm doing on the other system. So there are basically system-wide political opinions and then global ones that affect every system. Now, before we go into the details on which effects all of this can have, let's first look at elections a little bit. And this ties into my previous video on governments. So as you can see here, I'm currently in a republic, and that means that my political party representation is set to 2. That means I can have 2 leading political parties at the moment. Now, my previous election went in such a way that the pacifist won, and then we had some militarists as well, and then religious, industrialists, scientists, and ecologists. Now, the interesting thing about that is I only have 2 leading political parties, so only these 2 have a spot there, and the other ones don't have anything to do there at all. But they will still have an effect, but I'll go into that later. So, having these leading political parties has several effects. First of all, it basically determines which laws we can have. So as you can see here now, we can have pacifist laws and militarist laws. The fact that I only have 1 militarist law is not because this one is not the actual leader, it's just because these haven't been in politics for so long. So every election that a certain party is chosen, they get experience, and this is the experience bar. So these ones have been in power basically all the time, so they have potent. And basically being potent increases the amount of laws that we can have. So as you can see here, it says required political experience potent. This one has potent as well, this one has established, and this one has functional. So as you can see here, the militarists are barely functional, so that's why I only get this lower fleet cost law. Now, having these leading political parties has an additional effect, and that one is quite important. So if we go here, we know that the militarists and the pacifists are leading at the moment. However, at last election, we got 69 representatives, which was at that point our current population. So at the moment, our population is more, but they will only kind of get an idea of what they want to be at the next election. So at the moment, those 5 people are not really doing anything. But we have all these system representatives. So these would prefer to be in a pacifist government, these would be prefer to be in a militarist government, these in religious, and so on. That has effect on happiness. So as we can see here, we can see that we have plus 24 from leading political parties in system. And that's because we have 9 pacifists and 3 militarists, which are represented in our political parties. So that's 12, and the bonus for that is 2. So we get 24 extra happiness because these people are happy. They're like, yay, what I believe in is actually also believed in by the government. However, this stuff, all these people, they're not very happy because they're not being represented at all. So this is 5, 6, 7, 8, and the penalty for this is 3 per person that's not represented. So as you can see in the bottom there, it's minus 24 from not leading political parties in system. So as you can see, having a lot of people that have not the same beliefs as your political parties will lead to a big hit in happiness. However, what makes this interesting is that at the moment I can have 2 political parties. If I would change to a democracy, I would actually have 3 political parties. That would not only give me more laws to work with, but it would add another political party here, which means that more people will feel represented. So that is kind of a cool way they did it, I think, because let's say I would go dictatorship, then I can only have one political party representation on my Senate. So then it gets very interesting, because let's say I want to be a pacifist, but everyone is a militarist, then everyone will be very unhappy because they don't feel like they're being represented. However, the dictatorship has some tools to work around this. They have propaganda, which means that they can change the thoughts of their people, basically, but I'll get into that a bit later. So, but now we know what all this leading political party stuff does, and we know that it gives more laws as well as happiness or non-happiness. So let's actually go through what an election means. So in order to explain elections well, I thought I would load up this a bit more simple game, because it's early in the game still. So this is turn 20 for the Unfallen, and now we have the election at the end of the turn. So let's press end turn. So because we're in a democracy, we cannot really influence the votes, but we can give some official support. So that gives a small boost to the chosen party. So let's say we boost the scientists. So here are the survey polls. So at the moment it looks like the pacifists are winning. And then we would get industrialists, and then ecologists, and then scientists, and then religious, and then militarists. So let's click on next step. Then we get our votes. Not so many votes, because we don't have so many people. This one here has 16 people, and this one here is 1 person. And they all voted for things. Now, as we look here, we can actually see that the pacifists have won, and then it's the ecologist, and then... yeah, it looks like industrialist, but I'm not entirely sure. However, you will now see that ecologists will actually not be in 2nd place, but in 3rd place. So let's go next step. And you see that actually it's pacifist who won, then it's industrialist, and then it's ecologist, even though ecologist had a bigger bar. Why is this? Well, that's because the people that were not voted for, or the parties that were not voted for, they will pass on their votes to other parties. Now, as far as I've been able to figure out, this is just dependent on the wheel that you can see now in the screen. So as you can see, the militarists, they are closer to industrialists than they are to ecologists, and that's probably why they voted for the industrialists. Then we have the religious people, who are more close to the ecologists than any of these other ones, so they put in their votes here. Then we have the scientists that are between the pacifists and the industrialists, and indeed they gave some of their votes to the pacifist as well as to the industrialist. So all of this meant that actually the industrialist won, because this here is the original vote that the ecologist won, so way more than the industrialist. However, they have the support of the militarist and the scientist, and that made them win over the ecologist. So this redirection of votes is kind of an interesting system as well. So let's talk about dictatorships a bit. Dictatorships are quite interesting because they just allow you to choose whichever political party you want to have. But of course that also means that in general, your political party might not be aligned with what the people want themselves. For example, here I am ecologist, but I mostly have system representatives, which brings down my happiness a little bit because, well, 3 people are not in a leading political party. So there is something that we can do about it, because if you're in a dictatorship or in an autocracy, which is basically the dictatorship version that the Cravers have, then you get access to propaganda. So now my leading political party is ecologist, and that now allows me to do ecologist propaganda. So basically that takes away all the production, and then it progressively increases the support for the ecologist party. The longer it stays in the queue, the more efficient. So this will then over time increase this and decrease this in order to hopefully get more happy people. So basically we're just brainwashing them. Then let's have a look at the Republic and the Federation, because they can basically do actions during elections, while the democracy just has to roll with whatever the population wants. We already looked at this a little bit at the political party or the government guide, but let's look at it a little bit more. So if we press and turn, let's say now we want to have industrialists. Well, there's basically almost no industrialist support whatsoever, so we can take strong arm lobbying, which gives a very strong penalty to all of these. So this will increase vastly the amount of industrialist people. As you can see here, I get a lot of industrialist support that I would otherwise never get. Personally, I think this is a little bit of a missed chance. It would be great if now these people would actually vote industrialist, but they wouldn't actually be industrialists, so they would still adhere to their original political trends so that they would still become unhappy because you strong-armed everyone. But at the moment, you can just do this without any penalty. You just paid 1,000 gold. You can then increase the support for a certain party, and then everyone will be quite happy because now the industrialist won. And I actually have a lot of industrialists in my system, so they will all provide extra happiness. There's one more thing I'd like to talk about, and that's leaders, because they can have quite a big effect as well. So if we look at this guy's skill trees, we can see that he has 2 political skills. So one of them is this one here, public relations expert, and this one, Titan of Industry. So let's look at Titan of Industry. So if I assign him to a system, then basically I get 4% per hero level extra industry on the system. So at the moment I think I'm level 17, so 4 times 17 is the amount of percentage I would get. But also if he's on the Senate, if he's a political leader, every system gets 1% of industry per hero level on system. So as you can see here, my Senate has industrialism in them, and because this is my industrialist hero, he is basically leading the political party. So that means that his skill is actually counting. So now he's on a Senate, so all of my systems will get plus 1% per hero level on system, and he's level 17, so that will be 68. So let's say we hover over here, we can see that we get 153 extra from hero senator skills. So if we go to another system where this guy is not assigned to, and we hover over, we also get, here we go, plus 59.6 industry from hero senator skills. So even though he's not assigned there, he still provides that bonus. And that's because he's on a Senate and he has that skill that gives this. Therefore, if you are in a political system with a lot of political party slots, you might want to have heroes that have different political beliefs. Of course, that is a little bit of a trade-off, because just having this person on a system will increase the religious output of that system as well. So if you don't want that, then you might want to watch out. However, if you have a religious, militarist, and industrialist hero, then all of them can provide skills that might help your entire empire. So this was my guide on the politics of this game. You can definitely play without really looking at them and just kind of autopilot it, but I do enjoy tinkering with this system because it's a lot of fun. So there's a couple of things that are important. So let's recap. We've got this graph here that shows our current standing empire-wide. So let's say I don't want a militarist in the government, then now is the time to start boosting the other things by, for example, trading a lot or building a lot of industrial things and so on. This thing here can be quite important, so you can actually see what will happen in your empire. It's good to know, for example, that whenever you do something scientific, your industry leaning will also increase and so on. All these have their own leanings and so on. Then this button can be quite important, that you can see how all the events happening in this system have been affecting your political system. In general, I don't really look at this, but it is a very good thing to look at to kind of get an understanding on how everything works or why stuff went in a certain way. So yeah, I hope this video was useful and it helped you understand the political system better. If you have any questions, comments, or actually stuff that I forgot to talk about that might be important, then please let me know. So unfortunately YouTube took away the ability to annotate videos, but I can always add stuff to the description or pin a post in the comments or stuff like that, so that this information will not get lost. So I hope you found it useful, and see you next time.